observation that you're passionate about innovation and what that can do for your organization. So today's Fireside Chat is a perfect way to kick off our 2026 annual award season. And we are joined by the past two award winners, the 2024 Operations and Technology Excellence Award and the inaugural 2025 Excellence Innovation Award. So I'm hopeful that this conversation spikes some excitement, recognition, and practical insight in prompting your organizations to really think about opportunities in which your teams are using innovation and to bring those forward as possible submissions for this year's award. So Mark, Brian, let's dive in, and maybe if I could ask each of you to introduce yourself and then just give a high-level overview of maybe the project that your teams were awarded for.
Sure. This is just like home.
I know, right?
Good is that?
Comfy.
Right? Can't see anybody. So Mark Blair, I'm the CIO at Channel. Channel is a small ticket working capital and equipment finance lender. We grew a lot over the last few years, and just to kind of give it a backdrop, a lot of small teams that were in one building and had worked out all the different processes and technologies to do a great job. We grew into more buildings and into more teams and then into more business units, and pretty soon all of those things needed help. And so we, as we grew our management team and our workforce, we knew we had to do something, so we innovated to the max. We brought in a consulting firm. We looked at all 64 different processes. We documented them. We put together 50 different projects from technology to business process and did our big pivot to, over the year, put together technology, build new portals, survey customers. It was kind of crazy, but it all worked out. So, and it was a fun experience, and the award was also a very wonderful experience for us. So
awesome.
That's my summary.
Ryan?
All right, Brian Antonola, Senior Vice President of Fleet Operations for Fleet Advantage. We're an equipment financing company. We're really better described as an asset management company. We use data analytics and deep industry knowledge to help our customers manage their Class 8 transportation assets, right? So tractors and trailers. So our project was really focused around what we thought was probably the most challenging part of the lease process. That was the off-lease. Right? And that really came from a lot of conversations with our customers. They loved the front end of the process. They loved getting the new equipment. They loved having it delivered. We really were able to work with them on their specs and make sure their drivers got the type of equipment they wanted. But it always was the most painful at the end. So working with some of the feedback from our customers, we sat down with a very broad group from our internal team, and we said, if we could rethink the off-lease process, how would we design it, right? The existing process was emails after emails after emails, a surrender unit form sent out, and then we'd have an inspection and you'd get another email, and then you'd have 4 or 5 follow-ups from that inspection process, and then you'd have to move the asset. And when we dug into it, we had about 12 emails per truck for everyone coming back. We have 36,000 assets in our fleet today. So that's about 5,000 to 6,000 coming back every year at 12 emails apiece. It simply wasn't sustainable. So what we thought is, just like how we deal with the KPIs on the truck's performance, we're going to build an off-lease system that mirrors that. So if you're an organization and you have a hierarchy, someone that's responsible for North America, then maybe a geographic territory, we're going to build out the reporting, so you're going to see just the trucks that are impactful for you. Right? We're going to automate the surrender forms, so you can go in there and digitally just click on it, put in the mileage, update it. It would automatically trigger an inspection from a third party. After that inspection was completed, it would get loaded into the portal. Now the customer and us can see that. We'd make it really easy for them by going in there and saying, how does that inspection compare to our surrender conditions? And then allow them to upload the documents that satisfy the surrender conditions and close out the lease. So for our customers, it started out at about 60 to 90 days to complete an off-lease. And listen, I love a few extra evergreen rents as much as anybody, but really it wasn't a great process for them. And they were very unlikely to lease again because of that. So we were able to shrink that from 60 to 90 days down to 30 days for most customers. And a handful of strategic large customers, we were able to shrink that down to 19 days. So that drove incredible value to that customer. And for those handful of customers that shrunk all the way down to below 30, we've had almost 100% sign up for another truck, right? So the adoption from the customers has been fantastic. It's clean communication. There's only one email that starts the process. The rest of it can follow along. Everybody within the organization can see where we are in the process. And it's not only just reducing the time, reducing the stress on the customer, and they truly thought it drove a lot of value to them. And once again, they continue to sign up for new equipment. So for us, that was, it was a really team approach, started with the voice from our customer, and we're able to execute a program that gave them the ability to shorten that time and really be successful from start to finish.
Awesome. Sounds like two amazing projects. So Mark, when you and your company, heard about the Excellence in Innovation Award, what really made you kind of decide that you wanted to go for it, or maybe even things that you questioned whether you should go for it?
Yeah, there's just so many good things. I don't even want to think of it as an award. Well, that is really important, but just the process, right? Some of the great benefits that I could see is by just participating in the award, by just putting together the documentation, even if it never went back to ELFA, right? Just thinking through strategically how much we had done, and we weren't, what little bit there was that remained, had we thought through everything? Did we have all the pieces in place to win an award like this, right? One of the things we could see is how it would validate the work that we'd done and where we were headed. So, like I said, we turned it in for a consideration, but really the benefit to us was just the process itself, and it worked out really well for us.
Almost like reliving the success over again as you
yeah,
on paper,
yeah, and,
right?
and in past experiences, for business reviews and whatnot, you prepare that documentation, you put together what you were thinking, and even if it never happens, it's a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, awesome. Brian, if someone in the audience thinks their initiative is too small or not innovative enough, what would you tell them?
For us, it took a path we weren't expecting. We wanted to drive value to our customers. We wanted to put ourselves in the best position to continue to grow. And that all happened. But really what came together was our internal team. Everybody from our IT who built the infrastructure to it, but really our remarketing team who sold the assets, the sales team who had it communicated out. When we came back and we said, hey, we won, I was shocked at the different groups that were excited about it. So it really pulled the team together around acknowledging a challenging project and getting everybody's voice, starting with our customer and creating a great product.
Awesome. What would you say made your initiative innovation versus just a project? Mark?
I would say, by the very definition, it's changing status quo, right? That is, people, I think, when they put together innovation, they think, well, it's got to be like the next, automated whatever, delivery service or the next phone, but really, by definition, is changing your mindset and thinking different and changing the things that you do, and what a perfect alignment for what we were up to, right? So, I don't know, I guess that would be my quick answer.
Okay. Anything to add, Brian?
Yeah, you talk about it not being too small, and some of the components that drove value weren't what we expected, right? We thought it was going to be, the access to it. It really turned out to be about emails and being able to control data and communication. So, yeah, I think you're going to uncover pieces that you weren't expecting, and that's exactly the way it should go. And you also shouldn't feel like it's done. When we finished our project and we submitted for the award, we realized we were probably only about 80% there, right? So we continue to refine and understand how we can drive value, and that's probably spawned off 2 or 3 smaller projects that continue to try to improve the overall.
That's great. Yeah. How often do you get into what you think is your problem statement, and then as you start diving in, you realize that, you talk a little bit about having to pivot. Yesterday, I think there was conversations around pivoting at certain points, and I would assume that that was representative of both of your instances as well.
Very true. And it's not about scale, right? To me, I think it's about sharing. In our industry, any of these awards or any way that you can network more and share, this is just one of many ways, is a wonderful thing for both sides of that equation.
Yeah.
So,
awesome. How about a little bit about your implementation details, which obviously are probably pretty vital in the success of your project. Anything related to, level of specificity? Boy, that's a hard word.
none of us are going to try.
Specificity. There you go. Help most, whether it was timeline, key activities, technologies, change management, anything around
Change management to this day was something, now I am going to talk about scale, that was as big. Aligning all of the leadership and all of the teams was so key and such a big learning, and it continues to be learning, which is one of the reasons we brought in an outside firm. It at least helped us kind of all see the same thing. And we're not a competitive organization against each other, but there's always this my world thinking, and it eliminated that. And change management helps even more to make sure that everybody's involved and everybody understands, and it's natural alignment. And so it was a big learning from the whole process.
Yeah. Anything additional to that?
Yeah, for us it was realizing the people that needed to be connected to the training, right? So we initially thought it had to be someone with a large title, right? But you know who it was? It needed to be the people that did the work. They were involved from the beginning, and when connecting with our customers, connecting with our bank partners, they were able to give the level of detail. So we gave them some structure around how to deliver it, but it was those are the people who do the work every day. Get them out in front of it, really a train-the-trainer program, and then the proper guardrails to make sure that it's controlled, but they delivered the message far better than I could have.
Awesome. Yeah. So as you think about those of us sitting here and thinking about submitting potentially a project that we're working on, what would be one practical tip that would help someone submit a focused high quality nomination?
I would go back to, I'm going to repeat myself, something where people will learn, right? Something that it doesn't have to be awe-inspiring, competitive, we're going to be the best. It just has to be something that you want to share. And if you have the right culture in your company, and sometimes this is what gets you there, that is innovation, the desire to share, the teams that want to share. And probably one of the highlights, now that I think of it, was after the win, sometimes you have an opportunity to come back and tell your story with detail. And I think you would probably agree. That's really fun, because then you learn yourself, because in some of those sessions you get to go back and forth. Even the networks that you build with the individuals, you tell your story and you learn things. So everybody wins in this.
Yeah, awesome.
If I can just jump in there real quick. One thing that we took away is when we went back, some of our internal associates said, "Oh, too bad we don't have a project for next year." and what I said to them is, shame on us if we don't, right? Are we thinking about what's going to move our business forward, what can value our customer, and how we can put out a better product? If we are, and we don't have a single idea that we can present next year, whether we win or not, depending on how small, it doesn't matter. I mean, you kind of got to look internally and say, are we doing the right things? Do I have the culture where people are willing to speak up? Because there's got to be things. As good as we all think we are in this room, there are things that we can do better. So I think pushing back to your team and saying, let's talk about this, and using it as the sort of the sounding board to start it off. And if it's not your internal team, ask your customers.
Yeah. And, so many, or the both of you have referenced, you know, the team and the impact on the team. Tell us a little bit about the culture and the effect that the award had just on the culture, the morale, the pride, the excitement, not only winning, but maybe even after today.
There were a couple things about culture. One is I forgot to mention the name of our deliverable was the Customer Focus Project. And when we first went in, and we thought it was all about efficiency, but that was such a genius. I didn't come up with it, but one of our leaders did, because it kept us focused on that. And I think it actually, well, we've always been that way. It almost made it more formal that everything we do is customer focused, right? And another thing I think it did is it gave us more confidence, because this might be a large industry, but it's hard to know if, in the technology world anyway, and in some of the process, are you really doing the right thing? Are you just so far off from everybody else? You don't feel like you're always on solid ground with everything you're doing, and it helps with that. It helps the culture be more confident, and then they want to share, and I'll repeat myself, but.
We've both said that word several times, customer focused.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't, without a customer, none of us have anything to do. So understanding what will drive value there and then working back, and then embracing that with the internal team.
Yeah. What's the matter with nothing to do? That sounds like a good idea. Eh?
It's not a spot I want to get. I want a lot to do.
All right, Brian, maybe tell us a little bit about just internal prep. So as it relates to your initiative, what internal prep helped most, whether it was executive buy-in, communication plan, demo readiness, anything specific that you felt really?
You know, I'd love to give you a good speech about executive buy-in. You know, once we got that, it was about sitting down the individual teams that were part of that existing process and having an open conversation and making them feel comfortable. This wasn't about eliminating, this was about adding value. We didn't reduce any headcount, right? But when you could get them to sit down, be comfortable, talk about what was really important in these existing steps they do today. Right? I talked about there being a dozen emails. Well, every one of those was important, but there was 2 or 3 that we had to make sure we did right. And our team knew what those were. So if I had started off and I had just gone out there and said, we're going to redesign a portal, I would have guessed wrong on what was important. So we brought the teams together, sat them down, asked them what was important, and we also checked with our customers. We said, you know, what's the biggest heartburn for you in this process? And when we got them sat down, we came out with the right roadmap for being successful, and our key checkpoints along the way were focused on those key steps that they identified.
Awesome. All right, so in closing, one last question for each of you. Why should an ELFA member nominate their company for this award?
There are so many benefits. Am I supposed to do this? What do you say in
Both
one word,
you.
or just?
One word.
One word. Oh.
Well, no, you don't have to do one word. You can.
Well, it's very strategic.
Drove value.
Drove value.
Yep.
Great. Awesome. All right. Any questions for our panelists from the audience at all before we wrap up?
I couldn't see if anybody's raising their hand.
I know.
The lights are really bright.
You have to yell, right? You know, just a couple things if I could add. The whole marketing and partner trust and all the things that come with an award like this, right? It isn't what you go in thinking, well, it's gonna, but it really does help in those, in that way. Trust especially, it's like, in some sense they also believe, your friends and your neighbors and your partners believe, well, you must know something about what's going on when you get something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, it sure seems to me it's less about the project itself, but more just about the experience, the camaraderie, the teamwork, the feeling of everyone working together towards one.
I know we only have a few seconds left. I'm just going to say it again. If you can't come up with a project, turn around and really ask your team why. How can you not think of any improvements that need to be made? And there may be a bigger problem if you can't come up with one.
that's great. That's a great insight.
All right, so to our award winners, Mark, Brian, thank you for participating with me today, for your insight and your stories. I think this is what we needed to kind of kick off our 2026 award season. And so for everyone in the room, you know, if you're thinking we don't really have anything award worthy, I would ask you to reconsider and think about that. You know, I can guarantee that each of you are doing things in your own organization, whether it's a small initiative or a large initiative. We'd love to hear about it. To be, you know, you're becoming transformational in your environments and in your organizations every single day. So tell us those stories. We'd love to hear about them. And as you head into the closing event this evening, regardless of what shade of green beverage you have in your hand, I guess I would just challenge you to think about one thing. And that one thing is to identify one initiative you're proud of, capture the outcome, and start shaping it into a submission for the 2026 Innovation Excellence Award. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.